Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how Rishi Sunak has panicked and announced that he doesn't think the election will be held this May in a desperate attempt to head off the traps which Labour were laying for him. Problem is, it's really obvious that Sunak is trying to set up things for a May election, but wants to give himself the option of waiting longer if his attempted con-tricks don't work. Only he can't admit to that. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Rishi Sunak has been messing with my schedule again. This was not supposed to be the video here, but here we go. Election year is underway, right? Both the Conservatives and Labour have been busy trying to set the narrative. Part of Labour's strategy was to noisily point out how the Tories are setting things up for a May election. And it's true, they are. Without going over everything repeatedly, I'll remind you of the main example of this. The government are implementing national insurance cuts this month, this very week in fact. Instead of waiting until the new tax year in April, as would be usual, when you change taxation, the effects come into effect in the new tax year, April. No, not this one, January. Now, why is that? Because they want people to see their take-home pay go up on their wage slips. But why not just wait till April? Because in April, all of their tax increases come into effect, including including income tax. And millions of voters will see that take-home pay go back down again. But if the election is going to be in the second half of this year, as Sunak is suggesting today, then voters are going to see that take-home pay go down anyway. So there'll be no political benefit from that national insurance tax being implemented early, will there? Exactly. Absolutely no point in bringing this national insurance cut in before the other tax increases unless you are going to hold the election after the tax cuts come into effect, but before people see the tax rises. And as tax rises applied in April will be noticed in your May wage slips, you need the election before those wage slips come out to make the con-trick work. Just one way in which the Tories are really very obviously trying to set things up for a May election. So why has Sunak now tried to talk down the prospect of a spring election? Because he can't be certain his strategy is going to work. He doesn't want to commit to a May election until he's sure he's going to call it then. And he's not going to make that decision until the end of March. This is why the spring budget is being given in the first week of March. I think it's going to be the 6th of March. It's more usual to hold it mid to late March. So holding it early means they have 3 weeks to gauge public reaction to the budget, as well as the tax cuts that were coming in this Saturday, before making the decision to call the election for May the 2nd, or if they decide it hasn't worked, wait until after summer. But Labour have been making a big fuss about all the signs being a spring election, with the intention of painting Sunak as having bottled it if he doesn't call the election for May. This is why Sunak has made his statement today. And the statement shows two things. First, it shows that Sunak and his advisors realise that Labour have set up a really good attack line and they need to deal with it early. Second, that they're not committed to a May election. If they were not actively thinking about autumn as at least a plan B, they would not have been bounced into making this statement. Only because Sunak is trying for a May election, he couldn't rule it out entirely. His actual words were, "My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of 2024. He was even asked, so are you ruling out a May general election? And he repeated the line, "My assumption is it will be in the second half of the year." So he's not ruling out a spring election. He's just saying he thinks it'll probably be later rather than sooner. Because he is trying for a May election, so he can't rule it out. So he had to make the statement loose enough to allow for an election at any point this year. And because he couldn't categorically rule out a May election, he's not really dealing with Labour's tactics here. He's trying to turn the intended attack into a glancing blow rather than a direct hit. But let's imagine the scenario here. So let's say the tax cut fiddle doesn't work. I don't know whether it will or it won't. Let's say it doesn't. It certainly shouldn't. And the Tories can't weaponise their Rwanda plan against Labour either. Whatever they try, come the end of March, when Sunak has to make that decision, let us say the polls have not really shifted to any significant degree. So Sunak doesn't call the election for May the 2nd. Now, in this situation, Labour will still attack Sunak for bottling it. Sunak will try to say that, oh, I think you'll find as far back as January, I ruled out the spring election. But Labour can point out three things. First, that all of the evidence, all of their tricks pointed to them trying for a May election. Second, that Sunak didn't rule out a spring election at all. He simply said he wasn't planning on one. In fact, when he was asked by a journalist if you're ruling out a May election, he refused to say he was. And third, almost all general elections in the UK are held in May, give or take a month, basically spring or very early summer. And regardless of Sunak's plans, he's the one who decides when the election will be. It's like, saying I'm working on the assumption the election will be blah, blah, blah. That's something the leader of the opposition says, not the Prime Minister. So Labour can still say he's running scared from the public by not calling for the election at the usual time. This statement today might help a little, but it doesn't dodge the attacks to come if he tries to go along with the election. Then consider how Labour can proceed from there on in. So when the tax rises come into effect in April, Labour can point it out. When people see the impact of these tax rises in May, they can more loudly point that out. As I keep saying, the Tories risk small boat crossings actually increasing this year. Sunak was again today as part of this answer. Oh, it was down by a third last year. In terms of entry, down by a third. It was like, okay, is it going to be down by a third this year? Is it going to be down at all this year? It might be up this year. That's the problem with having reduced them by so much last year. It makes it harder this year. If they delay the election beyond summer. Basically, it's a huge gamble for them, waiting till after summer. Also means more mortgage holders, one of their primary source of votes, see their payments increase substantially before the election. As to the suggestion, because there are suggestions that Sunak might be trying to wrong-foot opposition parties, I don't think so. This is entirely about the public. Nobody actively involved in politics is falling for this. I know some journalists have said for a while that they think autumn is more likely, but I've yet to see a single one of them come up with a reason for that. Like Sophie Ridge a few days ago said she thought it would be autumn based on the idea, well, it gives Sunak more time in power. I mean, you would, wouldn't you? It's like, what sort of bollocks reasoning is that? Unless she thinks he can do something with that power between May and October, then that's nonsense. Their entire strategy is based around this year's budget. The Tory strategy is 100% based around this year's budget and the Rwanda plan. Now, given that nothing in the budget is going to yield benefits in the autumn, and certainly nothing in the Rwanda plan is going to, then it's all based on a con trick. And the longer a con trick has to run, the more likely people are to see the con. So it's obvious that they're laying the groundwork for May. Again, why would you have the budget statement early? You have the national insurance tax cuts early so that people can see the impact of that before they see the tax rises. You have the budget statement being made early. Again, if you're going for autumn, why would you do all that? So it's equally obvious. It's obvious that they're trying for May, but it's equally obvious they're not convinced their strategy will work. They're not totally sold on it. So they are giving themselves an exit to autumn just in case. And then they will pray for a miracle. Everyone in Labour knows this. In the Lib Dems, the SNP, Plaid, the Greens, Reform UK. Everyone with any understanding of politics knows it. This statement is intended purely for the public to provide some sort of shield against Labour's attacks if they go long. But all it really shows to someone like me, they've got no confidence in their strategy and are actually worried about Labour's attacks on them. Meanwhile, just as a little aside, Labour are not remotely panicking. There was a story a few days ago that Starmer wanted to dodge any TV debates that Sunak did not attend. Now, I said at the time this was something being blown up based on one quote from someone that wasn't Keir Starmer, and that it would not make any sense for Starmer to dodge any debates. So this was broached in so he launched his New Year's speech today, lots of journalists, and he took questions from all of them, not like Rishi Sunak, who only takes them from a select few. And one of them was asking about this, and his response was basically, bring it on. He's not hiding from any debates. If Sunak is found hiding under his desk come the general election campaign, Starmer has basically confirmed today that he will still be turning up to be scrutinised by the public. In fact, he made a show of the fact that he does this regularly, including today where he was taking questions from all of the journalists, not selected ones. There's only one party panicking right now. It is the one in government. Not entirely sure it's great to have a government which is prone to panic, are you? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.